wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And today, as always, I have an amazing warrior guest for you, Sunshynne Carpenter, and I'll come back to her in a second. But first, let me remind you of why you're here. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world, and in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's guest is no exception. Sunshynne Carpenter is an awesome warrior. She's a mother, a grandmother, an author, a founder, and CEO of JSC Enterprise. And her upcoming book, Incompleters Anonymous, 10 Steps to Master Freedom from Procrastination Domination, is sure to be a bestseller. Sunshynne's 30-year warrior journey is focused on helping clients achieve their personal and professional organization goals. She specializes in helping clients improve their self-esteem and self-confidence, develop effective communication skills, and manage stress and anxiety, all kind of tied to organization, I would imagine. As an empathetic and supportive coach, she creates a safe and non-judgmental space for clients to explore their thoughts and feelings. Her client-centered approach to coaching involves tailoring coaching sessions to meet the unique needs and goals for business owners, families, and individuals alike. Sunshynne's mission is to inspire 250,000, interested to hear where that number came from, Decluttered Spaces Internationally. Sunshynne Carpenter, and I'm going to cut the sunshine out from here on out, by the way. Welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things in Georgia? What part of Georgia are you in?
Thank you, David. I am in what they consider John Creek, Georgia, which the post office declares it as Duluth, Georgia. And that's about 45 minutes north of Atlanta.
Okay. So probably in today's world with everything in Atlanta moving north, I know places like Dunwoody and others kind of got absorbed into the Atlanta metroplex. We have the same thing going here in Dallas, right? Things that used to be like outside the city keeps moving further and further towards you. Is that what's happening there?
That is absolutely what is happening here.
Yeah, it's a state of the world. Yeah, I've been to Atlanta. We all call it lovingly Hot Atlanta.
Yes,
at least from my neck of the woods. So, and I was in Michigan for a while, and I grew up, and I'm from Kansas City and so on. But I traveled a lot, and at one point, I worked for General Motors. We had a couple of plants in the Atlanta area that I'm not even sure either one of them exists there anymore. One was Doraville and the other was Lakewood, and I don't think either one of them are there. But so what else is going on in Atlanta or in Georgia in your world today?
Well, weather is a big thing.
Okay.
David, we're waiting on spring to officially get here. We're still down into the 40s at night. Right now, it's an overcast. There's a little bit of pollen, which we don't mind the little bit because everything turns dusty green here in Atlanta. So having a garage is a good thing. So there is a little slowdown on the pollen accumulation, and it has not yet hit those warm degrees that we're expecting, being that we are hot Atlanta.
Yeah, well, the nightlife was kind of the way I referred to Hotlanta. So yeah, it wasn't as much the weather, but yeah, here in Dallas, we were complaining a little bit. Actually, I was in Michigan last week, and so the highs were in the 40s. So I was happy to get back here and actually pleasantly surprised that we were working on the 80s.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we were working on 80s again. So anyway, so that's good. So well, let's do this. I don't want to spend too much time on the weather, and I know the world's a little different there, and we'll get a little flavor of that. But let's take a quick break. We want to hear a little of our theme song. It's Not to Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back to talk to June Carpenter and hear her story on Warrior versus
But the
Zombie.
miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see.
All right, June, we are back. And so as I said before the break, let me hear about your story. How did you get from where you started? And I know we've both got a little journey behind us, so I want to hear how you got from where you started to where you are today.
Where I started was my concern about having a clear environment. I noticed that emotions get high, there's moodiness, there's arguments, and it became very important to me that it matters that our environments are in a stable situation where we can be less concerned about everything going on the outside of us, and we can really be in a relationship with each other, really be present with each other instead of being worried about a piece of paper, a cup, something on the floor, and the proverbial, it's time to go, and we cannot find the keys.
I can relate to that, by the way. That's I developed one of the most fundamental things I learned, and we'll get and talk about organization a lot in the next segment. But all I can say is those kind of wastes of time or use of my most valuable asset, which is my time, were a constant frustration to me. But anyway, so tell me, where did you start this journey? Give me a little bit of your history, June. Where did you begin? Where did you begin that journey? Not just in the organization space, but in your life. Tell me a little bit about your life and how you got from where you started till today.
Well, I started in life in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay.
Growing up, I graduated from high school, had a few children along the way, and went into corporate America and had my first corporate job when I was 20 and stayed there for 10 years. And I became very uninspired, should I say. There were a few things that were taken away, such as education. They would often send us to have classes that we can take internally and externally. And there were some shifts that happened in the organization. And I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur in 1995.
Okay.
I left corporate America doing our amazing network marketing businesses. I did one in the beauty industry with makeup and one that was in the legal industry.
Okay.
Ensuring that people had legal coverage. And from there, I didn't have the skill set to be the type of leader that you need to be in order to build an organization and to sell. and enroll people into products. And eventually I went into owning my own in-home licensed daycare center.
Okay.
I did that for 6 years. And then being in Indianapolis with all the beautiful snow, I didn't want to be there anymore. It took 5 years to get a plan that worked. And my oldest daughter, she was in the Army Reserve for 7 years, and she decided to go active duty. And we were actually stationed in the state that you are in, David. I lived in Killeen, Texas, off of Fort Hood for 3 years.
Know the area well.
Yes. And continued to move around, and we were there for 3 years and decided to move here, which is in Georgia, in 2008. And my 2 daughters and 5 grandchildren went back to Killeen, Texas. So I get to visit now.
Oh, so you have an excuse to fly back into Dallas. Okay, so we'll have to get together non-virtually at some point, maybe.
Absolutely. I would love that.
So you kind of went through in the business side of it, and you have 2 daughters, right, and 5 granddaughters. Is that, or grandkids, children? I didn't get the sex on those, but is that right?
I have 3 daughters. One of them is here in Georgia with me.
Oh, okay.
So 3 grown daughters, yes.
Okay. So your favorite is still there, right? Is that the way it works?
That's probably the way that is.
I only joke about that. I have 5 kids, and you work very hard to treat them all, the same, and love them all. You love them all unconditionally anyway. So it's interesting but I know that if your daughters are listening to your podcast now, they're going to say, "Oh, okay, so she's the favorite one." Okay, no. I'm not trying to cause trouble. So tell me about that path. Okay, so what I'm hearing is you started in Indianapolis. You did a couple of network marketing types of businesses, which a lot of people are easy entry in. They're not as hard a lot of times as being an entrepreneur. It's more of an entrepreneur type of thing in my assessment. And by the way, I do understand that world quite a bit. And I will just say that yeah, a lot of people miss the fact that it's still a business. You still have leadership. You still have to know where you're going with it and set goals, and then be willing to invest and learn the things that you didn't know as an employee or a consumer when you go into those particular things. So I get all of that. Tell me about, your personal journey there with your kids and your life. Any zombies that occurred in that space? Or, I mean, you actually hit on a couple of things, I think, that are natural breeding grounds, if you will, for zombies when you start down a path and it doesn't quite work, or you determine that you can't count on the corporate gods to take care of you, and some of them think they're gods, but we won't go there. But so tell me about that.
Zombies indeed. So of course, raising daughters, and I raised my daughters as a single mom majority of that time.
Mm-hmm.
There were the conflicts of what's important. Of course, for me, it was management of household. For them, it's spending time with family and friends. And of course, there's the schoolwork. One of the major zombies that existed was me not being able to look at them as if they were their own individuals and on their own path, and being in what I call organized church. It was a process of me pushing I don't want to say beliefs, but the ideologies upon them. And then I was afraid for them to grow up, very afraid. So my protection instincts were in overdrive.
Fascinating, yeah.
They were in overdrive. And of course, that caused some rifts between us. And there came a time where there was this thing that I did, which got me into the emotional management and really understanding anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I used to leave the VCR or the camcorder running all day just to capture moments of myself. And I happened to catch myself with this interesting look on my face when I would speak to them, i.e., yell. And I didn't like what I saw in the mirror, David. When I played those recordings back, I didn't like who I saw. I saw a mother who, the look I saw in my eye, and this is how I share it with my other parents when I work with them on how they interact with their young ones, is I had a look of disdain in my eye when I would speak to them. You know, it was all about order. I was very militant in what my expectations were and how I ran the house.
Right.
And once I saw that, that's when I decided that I was going to work on my emotional, how I expressed myself, and to open up and really look at them as their own individuals. So at that time, I began to really understand who they were and understand the eyes that I was looking out of that was just playing these roles of parent, child, and it was so much more available.
Well, that's pretty powerful. I mean, there's a lot of lessons there. I mean, and I can see in my own mind, and by the way, my superpower is connecting the dots. So when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, okay, where did she end up and where's she going and so on. And I can see how that zombie of control, that zombie of basically seeing the world through your eyes and not through the eyes of, in this case, children, how that could actually segue very well into understanding that when you're organizing, you're trying to organize your life with your kids in your home and trying to find some balance there that both accommodates you and accommodates your children while giving them the space to be who they are and realize that as they progress, obviously when they're children, but when they get to be adults, they have their own set of priorities. I think sometimes our government forgets that because they want to treat us like children, that we aren't smart enough or capable enough to make decisions, and we aren't all going to make the same decisions, and we're not all going to see things the same way. So it's a very important warrior lesson, life lesson that we all need to appreciate, that they're looking at things through their filter. And so that can be a challenge. And it could also be a learning if you really are as self-aware as it appears that you are, and you're taking that forward in your warrior journey. I love that. So tell me, in your process of working and with the kids and understanding and getting some discovery of yourself and realizing that communication, I love that part too. Communication, before this podcast, I said, be sure and smile, because I don't want people thinking you're mad at me because we're here and if they look at the replay. But the important thing is that we communicate more than just with our words. I mean, maybe we have an elevated volume because we're upset, but even when we're not upset, if we're not careful, our nonverbal communications can send a message that we aren't really intending to send. So that's also another overcoming or zombie that I think some of us need to be aware of, because again, zombie is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for moving forward, not in your own intention, but in fact, reacting or letting your zombie brain, as I call it, or it could be, your reptilian brain or whatever that's protecting you from pain, drive your actions forward, which doesn't lead us to a place usually that is better than where we are. So So tell me a little more. So what other type of zombies, challenges did you experience along the journey as you then started to take those family learnings into your entrepreneurial journey that you're on?
Wonderful question, David. More zombies were in managing myself, time, and what I did with my time. So I had this habit of watching soap operas. And I found out that it was robbing time and attention and creativity. So I had these desires of even writing books back then, but I couldn't find the space and the time to focus on writing. So I found out there were a lot of important things as far as having rituals, routines, schedules, making time for the people in my life that I wanted to spend time with. And of course, vegging out, in front of the TV has some health, there's an impact on health and mobility. I winded up gaining quite a bit of weight and didn't get an opportunity, because with the procrastination, it's more or less that we're not so much procrastinating, it's just we don't have the clarity, the information, and the knowledge to move forward powerfully, or to be able to integrate and implement the action and the steps that are needed to get the results that we want.
Yeah, I can see that. And frankly, it really is one of the things that I find, even I'm not into necessarily organization, but I do have attention deficit. I am diagnosed with ADD. Therefore, organization and lack of distraction in my world is critical to me being able, as you put it, move forward in a very definitive and powerful way, right? You're not wondering, should I do this? Should I do that? You're not seeing this. And that's one of the things. We get distractions on our calendar. We find things that really are triggered by our zombie brain, that search for dopamine. Some people are doing it now it's easy to understand, drug addicts. You can understand how that can happen, or alcohol, or, whatever the addiction might be. And we label those and say that's bad. But when it comes to things that kind of the zombie horde, as I call it, accept as normal, we don't realize that they're stealing our most valuable asset, which is our time. Organization and going along the journey, as I'm sure you will talk about when we get into the next segment, is more than just your space. Your space provides space. Your calendar, as I always say, makes space. Your ideal day. I live a version of my ideal day every day. And that means I have to do time blocking. I have to say, I now have a time block to do this podcast with June. I now have a time block to be available to my children. I have a time block. Obviously, things happen that you can't anticipate, but for the most part, you're making space, margin, if you will, in your life, which is your time, your money, your space, to actually function in the way you intend to. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's all in the whole process. Is internal and external. We can see things with our eyes, but how often do we scan ourselves internally to see where there are deficits occurring? Do we go on a path of, of increase, like really making investments and deposits that have great benefits afterwards? So yes, absolutely, that makes sense, because we can get lost. I call it drifting. We wind up drifting through our day and look up and we didn't get one half of 4 of the things that we had on our time block to get done today because we're constantly distracted. And that's actually one of the chapters in my book that I call the Reformation of Distractions. And it's an opportunity to really get an inside look of where those distractions are occurring. Because like you said, otherwise, it's like, this is just normal. This is what I do every day. And we don't get an opportunity to really look at the impact that is occurring. We look up 10 years later and something really isn't working that was blaring red, blinking lights at us saying, stop, don't go that way. But of course, it's the reptilian brain, it's the zombies. We really are sucked into, this is just metaphorically, right?
Right, of course.
We're sucked into what seems normal and what seems standard. And then it's the dopamine. It's not much dopamine that's given in doing the mundane things or being where it is that we say we're going to be. We get more of a rush being late, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the behavior pattern that I often get frustrated. Well, let's do this. I think we're kind of into today and the focus. If we miss something about your journey that is triggered in the next segment, feel free to bring it back. But let's take another break. Want to hear a little more of our theme song for the audio audience. It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll come right back and we'll talk about why you're doing what you're doing today and the value that you see yourself providing and so on. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with June Carpenter and Warrior versus Zombie.
See how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth.
All right, Jim. Interesting story. A lot of things going on there. As most warriors, I know that we kind of gloss over things that were a little more challenging than we let on, because that's a warrior attribute, right? As we get into this, is we're always focused forward. And so some of the challenges we've put behind us, it's hard for us to invest any time focusing on those because we're moving forward. We're warriors. It's our zombie brain that keeps pulling back the things from the past that you need to avoid, and it also inhibits your forward motion. So I love that about when I talk to warriors of all ilks, that we tend to focus forward. So that's not anything, but I know that story segment is really important, because sometimes we let ourselves believe that we're the only ones. We're the only ones dealing with this. And so the warriors that are on this podcast, they realize, and as I'm listening to you, I remember all kinds of zombies that occurred in my life. The accumulation zombie, the growing bigger and bigger and bigger and having more and more stuff. The more money you have, the more stuff you put into your life. The more stuff you put into your life, the more time it takes. Even if you pay somebody to do things, you still allocating time, mental resources, all those things. So tell me, why are you doing what you're doing today?
I believe that it's important that as beautiful human beings on this earth, that we are able to attain a level of peace of mind, a level of stress-free, because we know what stress is doing to us. We hear, right? The reports are that stress causes us it affects our well-being.
Absolutely.
And I just believe that it's important that if we get an opportunity to love ourselves more, that we get an opportunity to love each other even the more. We can be more of service. We can be more of a contribution. We can have opportunities to spend, I think I said this already, spend more time with each other, which that's really where the real value is. Because the saying is that on that wonderful day, there will not be a U-Haul that gets to go with us. So, yeah, I just believe it's important. Because it's challenging to be in life alone. Loneliness is huge. Depression is huge. And I believe that if we, and it's somewhat on the minimalist aspect, that if we're managing less stuff, that we'll get an opportunity to be more productive and enjoy the things that we really, truly enjoy and that we really want. Traveling, it could be building a business, spending more time with your grandchildren, and reducing one of the things that is on the brink, that has been here all along, is that we don't have enough financial stability to live on when we're in a long life situation. And there's just a lot of hardships and suffering that come. And I really want us to be in a suffer-free space as much as possible. I just think we can be able to enjoy life more with less.
So what I'm hearing is your why is a lot of making that space for people to appreciate and be present. I'm going to use my words, in the life that they're in, that includes, that's the thing. One of the things I find, and I say this over and over to the ad nauseum, if you will, to people in my life, because I learned this too late to really appreciate as much as I do today. And that is that you should never view time as something to waste. People know that, right? But you should never use the word, and you've used it a few times, and I'm not being critical here. I'm just saying you should never spend your time. That's a consumer mentality. Your time, in my world and what I teach, is your most valuable asset. It is the only thing that none of us have more of than the other person. You can leverage it, you can invest in it, you can do things that give you a return on investment of that time. You can get more time or more space, if you will, by investing your time in the right things. And so you mentioned one in your story about the TV and media and those kinds of things. That's a big zombie. That's a big time suck, as a lot of people say. And it's a way to waste and or spend. But a lot of people spend their time because they've put themselves in a position really to not be able to get rid of that obligation, if you will. So you have a house. I find this all the time. I live in a mid-rise. When I have something go wrong with my place, I call the office and say, hey, I need a light bulb change, or the plumbing's not working, or the air conditioning, right? I mean, people don't realize that when you invest or you spend your money on a home, and I'm not dissing homes, I'm just saying you got to realize that there's a time component of that you may not have realized. And again, if you have enough money, you can pay somebody to take care of stuff, but you're still taking time. You got to figure out what your budget is, what your allocation is. So I love that about your why, in that, because we're very aligned there. I'm actually qualified as a minimalist. I have gone the other way. I went on that same journey I'm talking about of accumulation that you mentioned earlier, and now I'm going back down the mountain, and I haven't gotten to where I want to be in full transparency, but I'm on that journey every day of getting more and more space, which may or may not mean less and less physical space, more and more space in my calendar, in my life. Because you're right. The only thing you can take into eternity, you said it in your own way, is people, is relationships. The other stuff you're going to leave behind. And nobody's going to say, oh, well, he had a, or she had a big house or a big car. Well, yeah, that was, if that's what they remember about you, I'm not so sure that's not ending my life with regret, because that's not what I want to be remembered for. So tell me, you mentioned the 250,000 internationally. Tell me a little bit about that, because I can see your value. You've got a lot of experience, a lot of relevant ability to relate to your clients, relate to people you're trying to serve. But tell me, what is your basis for the 250,000 and your impact? What's driving that?
I had to go bigger.
Okay.
I just had to go bigger. I was talking to one of my mentors and coaches, and I had set, a number in a lower thousand frame. Mm-hmm. And I realized that the component of give back, to reach a goal like that, it just increases the opportunity to really impact a lot of lives. So these 250,000 spaces, for one person, it may just be with their electronic information.
Right.
For another person, it could be a junk drawer. For another person, it could be that they've decluttered their daily life,
mm-hmm.
changed from trying to squeeze 20 things into one day. And they've attained a place where they get an opportunity to spend time with themselves, read a good book, take a hike, spend time in a jacuzzi, just really spending time to decompress all of the noise that constantly surrounds. And if 250,000 decluttered internal and external spaces means that there was more time created to invest in something else that's meaningful, which can thereby bring more joy or fulfillment or the ease of access of something, make someone's life a little bit better somewhere.
Well, I love that. And I got to tell you that a lot of people don't understand the impact of that. My life, my vision, my unique reason, if you will, for being on the planet at this point in my life is to change the world one dream at a time. And the point is, people will say, well, how can you change the world? And I said, well, if I understand your dream and I help you achieve your dream, and then your dream includes other people. I mean, it's pretty easy to see. I'm known worldwide because I have a worldwide podcast and show, and I've worked in global corporations as the vision warrior. You may, be the organization queen before we're done here. So the point is that it's more, as you point out, of an impact. And these 250,000 spaces, by impacting 250, let's just suggest that it is 250,000 people. Those people now have more space to have relationships with other people, and to other people to maybe learn from and duplicate or follow on their path. So as opposed to just being captive by the consumer mentality, by the spend my time mentality, by the dopamine, and then gets the stress part of it where you've got the cortisol and the fear driving your life, you're now able to have more of an abundance, a positive mindset, focused forward in a way that's organized and gives you the ability to move forward in a powerful way, which is all what I've heard from my takeaways. But let's do this. We're going to have to get into we could talk for a long time. You and I are very aligned. So we're going to get into what I call because I put 4 million miles on airlines, the land the plane segment, where we're gonna land the plane, and when we come back, I want to hear if we take away any one or two things from this discussion, from your story, from what you're doing today, what would you want to make sure we take away? Okay, so let's take a quick break. We'll come back after we hear a little bit of our theme song for the audio audience of It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with June Carpenter and Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul. And by the grace of God.
Well, June, it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. You've given me a lot of things to contemplate as I'm looking at my own life. But as I said before we took the break, if we take away anything from this discussion, what one or two things do you want to make sure we don't miss?
I would say that it's to seek balance, David. Seek balance. Review what is going on in your atmosphere, in your daily, and make it a priority to find ways to discover, because some people haven't had, it's been chaos their entire life, and it delivers, it's an addiction to chaos. Mm-hmm. But to make balance a priority.
Well, I love that, making balance. One of the misconceptions with balance that we people don't understand is, what are you balancing to? It's like, what is the big rock on the other side? Is it keeping my house clean? Is it keeping things organized? Is that where your balance is going, right? I mean, as an organized life, organized calendar, organized finances, organized time, again, which is your most valuable asset, where is that going, right? I mean, life is up and down, as I say, ups and downs, wins and losses, things happen. We all know that. So a lot of people can perceive that balance means my life is never going to be balanced. And that's not true. Your balance changes, just like, when you're making a trip from here to the moon, it adjusts all the way. There's challenges, but you're moving towards a direction of intention that you ultimately want to arrive at that vision or that destination. And you don't really arrive, as a theme song says, it's not the getting there, because it's the journey every day.
Absolutely.
It's not about arriving, because as you know, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian. We know that when we arrive, we'll know. So, when you get there, you'll know. That's, again, the theme song of the podcast. And so for those listening to it, there's more to it than just some bumper music. This is there's a message that goes with the Warriors. So, well, that's beautiful. So I know, we're doing this live in the Hive on the Be Connected platform. You're a mover and shaker in that space, as I try to be. So tell me, how else should we reach out to you? What else do you want us to do if we're listening to this podcast?
I do not have a website.
All right.
And on social media, Facebook, I can be found by Sunshynne Carpenter. On Instagram, Sunshynne. My email is lifesingredients@gmail.com. And I guess it probably would have been good to have a good calendar link if anyone wanted to meet with me.
Well, the good news about that, June, is you don't have to be apologetic, because people listening to this podcast, if you want to follow up with June, there'll be relevant links, either emails and those kinds of things, in the show notes or in the description. So you'll be able to find those. So that's not a problem. The best way I can tell you is, even though if you're not a troll or is be intentional. Get on this platform where we're doing this podcast at June's or my invitation, and or anybody else for that matter, get on here if you're not a troll, not somebody, because it's a very intentional, warrior-driven platform. And you mentioned something early on that I will tell you, and I actually did a talk on our summit about reducing the noise. Too many people get captive in the LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, even in their email inbox, and they don't make the space to intentionally connect. And that's obviously how I met you, how we came to have this mutually beneficial relationship. So again, I would encourage people to do that. Well, June, it's been awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with our audience. We may come back and do an organization triggered episode on my new podcast that I'm launching here shortly called Triggered by Warrior versus Zombie. We may come back and have an episode on organization as we go forward. So with that, thank you again.
And thank you, David. It was great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's been fun, and there's so much more I know we'll have. But the good news is we're on the journey now. And for those that are interested, reach out to June, join the Be Connected platform. June Carpenter, I don't think there's another one on the platform yet. There's about 20,000 people. It's not like 40 million like you have on other platforms that have the same name or whatever. So hopefully you can find her there, but you won't have any trouble. I know she's going to be very important on this platform. So with that, let's hear the outro of It's Not the Getting There. We'll be back next Friday with another warrior and another episode of Versus Zombie.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.